Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second concurrent session of the day, Compassion, Resilience in Higher Education. Our presenter today is Christina Herbin, a faculty member at Washtenaw Community College. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom room screen, or feel free to chat throughout the presentation, and we will address your questions at the end. So with that, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Thank you, Kate. And let me just share my slides here. Yep. Yeah, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me this Thursday afternoon. And today we will have a discussion more about compassion, resilience in higher education. And I know Kate just gave a general introduction more about me. Like I've been an educator since 2012 and also working as a licensed professional counselor and a trained compassion and resilience facilitator. So a lot of this material will come from my previous trainings of being able to learn what it means to really have that compassionate presence, whether in elementary school, middle school, and even in higher education. Throughout today's talk, we are going to explore just the profound impact of just compassion. And when we think about compassion, that's directed towards ourselves and others. And it's a very powerful tool that can really combat things like burnout and really rekindle our passion and joy in the work that we do in higher education. We're going to talk through a couple proactive steps of how we can thrive and just create a supportive environment for students, staff, and faculty really just to thrive. So we'll discuss terms like compassion and resilience, we'll look at burnout, and we'll look at more evidence-based strategies and techniques. But to start, I always like to just show this picture here. And how many of you have ever felt like this hamster in this wheel, just with our fast-paced life? And then you're more than welcome just to use the chat feature too. We know that just with our fast-paced life and just the nature of our work in higher education, it sometimes can feel like we are in this hamster wheel. Like we never really have a chance just to catch our breath. We're dealing with so many demands. We may go to bed at night just thinking about all the things we weren't able to get done in that given day. And sometimes life can really spin out of control. Education, it is naturally a realm filled with many changes, shifts in expectations, and uncertainties. And all of that can be very just overwhelming at times. And all of you are working just to meet the needs of your students or your institution while also just caring for yourself. So hats off to all of you and just the presence you provide on campus for your students or your staff or your faculty. And when we think about just knowing, I wanted to start with just the introduction just to get to know who's in the room here. I'm interested in learning just how long you've maybe served in the education field or higher education. So really take a minute just to reflect on how many years of service that you've had. Yep, and if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and share it right in the chat. Yeah, I'm seeing 28, 20, 10, 30 plus, 14, 15. Yeah, so a lot of years collectively of how much time you've really worked in higher education institution. And thinking of your collective years, I want you also just to take a minute just to reflect on, and you can just share briefly one or two sentences of maybe why you decided to join the higher education field. Yep, so I'm seeing just to be able to continue to learn, help others achieve success, empower students, make an impact. Yeah, all those are great reasons of what really fuels our passion to work in higher education. Interest in subject matter, never wanting to leave school, so being a lifelong learner. Mhm. And I'm sure just in this room, there's probably some math educators here. And if we were to add up all the years of service of everyone in the session, it'd be well over 200 years of education or service collectively. And just envision how many students you've personally interacted with during your particular career, especially those of you who have over 10 plus years. And just this practice of reminding ourselves of the years we've been an educator or exploring the reason why we're drawn to this field, this is a helpful tool that can get us through those tough days. And we honestly, we all have tough days. And I wanted to start with just our intentions for today's session. So, by setting intentions, we really bring presence to our thoughts, our actions, and we'll be able to start with a quick grounding exercise. We'll explore the meaning of compassion and compassion resilience. We'll talk a little bit further about what is compassion fatigue. And then we'll end by discussing what are some strategies that support our renewal and can help us overcome compassion fatigue and really tap into our resiliency. So, to start, I wanted us just to be present just here in this space today. So, if you're in a place that's comfortable, you can place both of your feet on the floor. You can have your hands comfortably in your lap. And I want you just to be able to think of one thing that you have on your mind that you can maybe just set aside to be present in this moment here. And once you think about that particular thing, focus on your breathing. So, being able to take 3 deep, slow breaths. And you're more than welcome to follow this prompt here or do your own guided breathing, whatever feels most supportive for you. And when we think about compassion, compassion is this awareness of someone else's pain coupled with the desire to help in alleviating it. So while we'd really desire to alleviate another person's distress, we're also confronted with the reality that we can't fix another person's pain. Many of you provide the holding environment for your students or your faculty or staff, where you're creating spaces for them to feel heard, valued, appreciated, or respected. But just imagine the exhaustion that sets in with just the weight of even what your students are dealing with just in their day-to-day life. And we tire because we're humans. Resilience is defined as the process of really adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, any threat, or any other significant source of stress. Resilience enables each of you just to persist in the face of challenges. When we think about compassion resilience in higher education, this is the ability for us to maintain our physical, emotional, and mental well being. And this is also us using our energy productively so we can compassionately address and identify stressors in our students or barriers for them. We know that an ultimate goal of higher education is really to help students expand their knowledge and skills. So there is a clear association between better academic performance and resiliency. So students who perform well academically, they show higher rates of resiliency and self-compassion. And campuses, they really should invest in strategies that help students become more resilient. And this hopefully will help prevent students from leaving your institution or withdrawing early. And then lastly, those who work in higher education, they can really take the time to tune into themselves and just notice any signs or symptoms of stress, burnout, or compassion fatigue. When we focus on compassion resilience, this will guide us back to those core values that really drew us to work in higher education in the first place. But as the school year goes on, like we may have a difficult time maintaining that compassionate presence, and fatigue can set in. Like who's ever woken up feeling like this in the morning before heading into work? And think about just that bone tired feeling that we have, like we feel it deep in our soul. But we are going to go over just a couple key terms. The first term we're going to look at is burnout. So, burnout, these are those days you just don't want to get out of bed. Like you just don't want to start your workday. There's stress because there's demands placed on you with work or with your personal life, or maybe you're dealing with helping to support students who are dealing with maybe mental health challenges. Another type of term we'll look at is secondary traumatic stress. So just when you think you've heard it all, think of those time a student pops into your office hours and shares maybe a major health diagnosis they've just been diagnosed with, or that they've experienced a tragic loss, or you have a student that's struggling with being homeless or unhoused. You find out that your classmates or your students have a tough time being able to pay their bills, or they just experience a recent job loss. And although we can provide resources directly on campus to support them, you hear these stories over and over again. And some of these stories really stick with us. Sometimes we can have a tough time just sleeping at night. Many of you are providing that holding environment for your students just to cope with trauma or other stressful life experiences. And with secondary traumatic stress, the symptoms can be similar to PTSD. So it could be things like intrusive thoughts, avoidant behaviors, hypervigilance, irritability, anxiety, and sleep disturbances. And then lastly, it's just this idea of, oh my, I can't help this one. And that's compassion fatigue. It's literally just a decrease in a person's capacity to empathize with those who are suffering. We're completely overloaded with the stress of other people, which just leads to just physical and mental exhaustion. We lose our empathy. We become numb. We're less effective in supporting others. And secondary trauma, burnout, both of those are components of compassion fatigue, and they affect mostly every higher education professional at some point during their career. And compassion fatigue can develop slowly over time and can also go unrecognized. But I wanted to open up the chat again just to go over some discussion questions. And again, you can share if you feel comfortable. But what feelings and experiences might contribute to a person experiencing burnout, secondary traumatic stress, and compassion fatigue in higher education? So just take a minute to reflect on your own or experiences that you've witnessed, and then you can type in the chat if you feel comfortable. Yes, I'm seeing just having a high teaching load could be a big source of stress. Having over 120 students, a difficult boss, home problems. Yeah, reading your students' work as they share about their traumas, absolutely. It's that vicarious trauma, just listening to their experiences. Students having more needs, whether it's housing, food, mental, emotional challenges. Mhm. Being told to do more with fewer resources, larger class sizes. Yeah, all of these are major contributors that can just get in the way of us showing up more compassionately. So yeah, I appreciate you all for sharing. And then how would this lead to one's inability to act with compassion during their workday? So based off what you shared, like how is this going to get in the way of us being compassionate? And think back to our definition of compassion. So, this is the awareness of someone else's pain coupled with the desire to help in alleviating it. Yes, I'm saying there's no time left for ourselves or our own problems. You start to doubt yourself, makes it harder to be flexible, available, or even just present. So, as a lot of you are sharing, it's really hard for us to access our compassion if we're experiencing these unpleasant emotions, if we're irritable, if we're detached, if we're doubting ourselves, if we're stressed. And it's really important for us to think through of like why it's so important for us to show up compassionately, especially in a higher education setting. And then yeah, I'm hearing a lot of you helping everyone else, but then forgetting about yourself. And the goal is really to help us catch those warning signs early. Like we want to ensure that we can create this path of resilience and renewal. And some of the warning signs of compassion fatigue can be just exhaustion by the work demands, reduced empathy, feeling detached, losing interest in those activities that used to bring joy. And we can take proactive steps to avoid compassion fatigue and really maintain our wellness. It's beneficial just to begin by learning more about a starting place for ourselves. So the ProQual is called the Professional Quality of Life. So it's a 30-question free assessment that helps to measure and assess for things like compassion fatigue and compassion satisfaction. And I can place this in the chat here, so you'll have the link. And with this, it's good to just take the ProQual on a regular basis, which provides that quick self-check-in throughout the academic year. So it's a link, it's free, it's accessible, just something you can use anytime you need it, just to see where you are in regards to your compassion. And we are going to spend some time looking at the wellness compass. And this can serve as a directional guide to really support us professionally and personally. With this compass, there are 4 sectors. There's the mind, the spirit, the strength, and the heart. With the mind, this focuses on just being well organized and just us being able to engage in meaningful work. And this is us also being fully present. We practice that quick mindfulness exercise at the start of session today of just how important it is for us to be present with the work that we do. Next is spirit. So the significance of spirit focuses on rest and play. And experiencing resilience means we're really intentional about creating opportunities for rest and play throughout our days. And then there's strength. So this is how we care for our bodies. We look for signs and symptoms, and we really want to minimize and manage stress. And then lastly is the heart sector. So this is us taking a closer look at our emotions and our relationships, both with ourselves and with others. And we can really focus on being self-compassionate. And we can seek out compassion in our relationships with our students, our staff, and our faculty. And we'll look at each of these 4 sectors just in detail of just some strategies you can add to your own personal toolbox. So we're going to start with meaning. So why do you do what you do in higher education? Like what keeps you coming into work each day? And take a moment just to reflect on this particular question. So considering your entire time at your institution, can you recall a time when you felt most alive, most involved, or most excited about your involvement in your school? And as you're reflecting on that particular moment, like I mentioned, you're more than welcome to share that in the chat if you feel comfortable. And as you think about that experience, think about what made it an exciting experience and what gave it energy. What was it about you? Like, what unique qualities did you have that really contributed to that exchange? And then what were some important factors you noticed within your school that really helped to make that a meaningful experience? So was it the leadership qualities, the structure, was it relationships? And I'm seeing in the chat a lot of you are describing that excitement of just starting. So starting your career in higher education is something that really was something ignited within you. Mhm. And I'm hearing a lot of you describe just we tire, so we don't have that same vigor or excitement that we had day one or month one. So it's really important for us to take the time just to think through how we can create more moments like this that creates meaning for us. This is something that can really help to maintain our longevity and just give us strength and can help us to persevere on those tough days. So I really challenge you to think through how you can create more of these meaningful moments at your institution. Next is the spirit component, which focuses on the idea of play. We know that elephants play, dogs play, humans play, and it's something that we're not taught. It's just natural. And there is an evolutionary reason as to why we play. Play actually increases our capacity to live a joyful and creative life. And currently, once we turn into adults, there's just not enough play in our lives. And it's really a problem of our modern world where we're really just work obsessed. And it's important for us to think through how we can really magnify that power of play. So I want you just to take a moment and just share an example of play that you notice in your own life. What are you doing when you feel most alive? Who are you with? And you can share that even in the chat if you feel comfortable. Yes, I'm saying video games. Yeah, and having a tough time being able to shut off work stuff. So I'm seeing work stuff pouring into your personal life. Watching your pets play, absolutely. Music, it's a huge one. Exercising, playing with dogs. Yeah, these are all good ones. And it's helpful just for us to hear how others engage in play, like spending time with friends, kids, hiking. And with this type of intentionality, it really can support just our quality of life. So, job satisfaction and compassion resilience, they're both connected in a way. And we honestly can focus on striving for more moments of play. And as each of you are sharing moments of play, I'm noticing that no one mentioned joy or play during the workday. Mhm. Oh, I'm hearing one in the chat, just having a happy hour. Yeah, I was going to challenge you to really think through how we can create more moments of play, even through our work days and at home. And by doing that, that really can create more job satisfaction and support us in being compassion resilient. Laughing with students. Yeah, so those are all helpful strategies just to think through. Playing through active learning strategies. So again, we need more play in our life, whether it's happening in the classroom, on campus, or in our personal lives. And then next is just when it comes to stress. So we know that stress is an inevitable experience that we all can relate to as humans. And we're likely to experience the good stress of maybe starting your career, and we're likely to experience the bad stress, maybe losing a loved one. And stress is our body's natural way of responding to any kind of demand or threat. And we know that small amounts of stress can be really good for us because it motivates us to take action or adapt. But if we experience too much stress, then we're likely to experience the not so pleasant aspects of it, which then can activate our fight or flight response system, which activates our sympathetic system. And our body is constantly trying to maintain this homeostasis. So it's really fluctuating between our parasympathetic system being activated and our sympathetic system being activated as we teeter-totter through life experiences. And stress may look different. Like we all can relate to the sense of being stressed, even though the signs and symptoms may look different depending on who you are. So for those of you, if you want to share, like, how do you know when you're stressed then? Yeah, what are some of those signs or symptoms that you know that you're stressed? Yeah, chest pains, headaches, wanting to just sit down all day, racing thoughts. And when we think about just our stress responses, it's likely to affect all aspects of our sense of self. So, from a physical standpoint, we may experience like GI issues, headaches, chest pain, back aches. From a cognitive standpoint, we may have just worrying, racing thoughts, forgetfulness, having a tough time focusing, or poor judgment. Our behaviors may change. So we may shut down more, avoid things. We may have shifts in our appetite, so eating more, eating less. And then from an emotional standpoint, we may be a little bit more moody or irritable. We may feel overwhelmed or experience symptoms of depression. So it's really important for each of us just to know that stress, it is a normal aspect of our life. And it's just important for us to know what our signs and symptoms are when things are a little bit off balance. So it's us just being able to tune into those signals. And with just our demanding lives, we also can easily get caught up in this exhaustion funnel. And this is when we first start to experience sleep difficulties. Then we have less energy. We start to experience more aches and pains. Then guilt comes in, and we start to feel more joylessness and even depressed mood. So these are just some things for us to be mindful of when we think about just our workloads, where a lot of us can easily get sucked into this exhaustion funnel. And we know that some aspects of our job, they're unavoidable, but we can take proactive steps to make those activities less depleting that can really support our overall well-being. Let's skip this. And then lastly is just self-compassion. So this is discussing the healthy relationship we can have with ourselves. And self-compassion involves us supporting and soothing ourselves when we're struggling, just as you would a dear friend or a loved one who's in a similar situation. Dr. Kristen Neff, she's a leading researcher in self-compassion, and she identified 3 elements of self-compassion. And the first element is for us to be kind to ourselves. And we also want to avoid judging ourselves too. Oh, and I know Jennifer wanted to make a quick announcement. So.
Oh, I just wanted to remind you that we have about 10 more minutes before heading into the Q&A portion. Just wanted to do a quick reminder.
Okay, thank you so much. Yep, and will this be the last 2 slides we'll cover then? Thank you, Jennifer. And secondly, we also want to recognize our common humanity versus really isolating yourself. We know that everyone has challenges and others have felt the way that you have felt or have experienced something that you have experienced. And it's really important for us just to know that we're not alone. And lastly, just being mindful of our emotions versus just over-identifying them. Like we really want to be in a space where we can not generalize our experiences and know that if we make one mistake, it doesn't mean that we're a complete failure at life. And if you go to Dr. Kristen Neff's website, she has tons of amazing resources that really support us in being able to foster that self-compassion. And by practicing self-compassion, we really recognize just our common humanity, that we are more alike than different. And we all crave that recognition, that attention, that affection, and above all else, just happiness. And we can skip this grounding exercise. But I do appreciate all of you just for attending today's session, just to learn a couple quick strategies just to support our well-being and our longevity in the field of higher education. And creating a compassionate culture, it does require a lot of intentionality. So I hope you'll just consider just some active steps that you can adopt just to support your renewal and your resilience. And that will help in creating a more compassionate campus for you, your faculty, your students, and your staff. So thank you all just for attending, just to talk through more about why compassion is so important. And I can pass it back over to Jennifer and Kate.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was a wonderful presentation. We do have about 5-10 minutes left, so I wanted to open the floor for any questions. If anybody does have questions or things they want to continue to discuss, feel free to put them into the chat or the Q&A section. I'll give it a few minutes to see if any come through, and if not, we've got a few that we might want to ask.
Thank you.
Someone asked Christina if we could see the slide with the grounding exercise. And just so everyone knows, we also will be glad to provide these PowerPoints in recordings of the session next week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can go back to, this is one grounding exercise here that's really helpful, that really reminds us of our common humanity. I know we didn't get a chance to talk through this one. Is this the one you were referring to, or the one that had the visual? Oh, this one. Okay. And this is just a quick practice that just, again, it helps us to bring to mind some person that can be a little bit difficult to be around at times. And it really forces us to bring ourselves out of a place of judgment and just be fully present with that particular person. So this is like a really helpful um, exercise that you can use. And I can place this link in the chat. I have a compassion meditation too. Let me see if I can share it.
Perfect, thank you. While you are getting those links, one other question, this one's kind of broad, but what do you think are some of the best strategies to manage burnout?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think with burnout, step one is always recognition. Burnout can slowly creep up on you where you don't even know that you're burnt out. And maybe others will start to notice your irritability or notice your symptoms. So I really encourage people just to check in with themselves, like just asking yourself, like, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do to feel better in this particular moment? And if I'm feeling good, I want to continue to do more of that. If I'm feeling unpleasant emotions, I can start to brainstorm, figure out what's going on that's causing this emotion or this experience. And it's really hard to identify just one strategy because it's going to be unique to you. It's going to be unique to what's going to work best for you.
Thanks, that definitely makes sense and very helpful.
Mhm.
One last question, unless any more pop up in the chat. How do you think we can best support students who are suffering or experiencing hardships?
Yeah, one of the best strategies is just allowing students just to be heard. I think we really need to slow down at times and just be fully present with another human being. Allow them space just to share their experience or just to be heard and validated. I think that can be so powerful and transformative. And in a lot of cases, if a student's going through a hardship, we don't have magic wands to change their circumstances. And the best we can do in those moments is just to be with them and just to provide that one-on-one validation of just seeing them and just being with them in that moment.
Thank you. That was so helpful. I want to thank you for your presentation today, Christina, and all the wonderful information that you shared. And thank you to everyone who attended as well. It looks like we are just about out of time, but as I mentioned, we will share the recordings next week. And assuming it's okay with you, Christina, the slide deck and resources as well. But our next concurrent session will begin at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can view the chat for the session meeting room links or access our conference website for a complete list of those concurrent sessions and their descriptions. While you're accessing the conference website, please don't forget to swing by the virtual exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team. While you're there, you can view a quick 5-minute demonstration, request your free conference t-shirt, and be entered to win a $50 hourly giveaway. We will see you at the next session. And again, thank you so much.